week, we went over the words that we use and the impact they can have and the sordid history of it as well. And this time I want to talk a bit more about the actual photos that we use, primarily in our marketing, on our websites and such. And I guess really go through my disdain and issue with utilizing stock images of people with disability. For the record, stock images with people with disabilities are normally paid models, good for them. And whilst we should be supporting that, stock imagery should only ever really be utilized as a placeholder or a stand-in while you, with effort, really try and create your own images that you can use. So I'm going to go through, I guess, a few of the issues that come about when you are using stock images from a commercial, but also, from a mission standpoint, and then move into some of the fixes that I've used in previous businesses and with clients at the moment. One of the issues with utilizing stock imagery, similar to the words, is that a lot of the times providers and disability organizations will use the same photo. There are a few iconic photos in the Australian context anyway, disability, of people in wheelchairs in the kitchen, people being cared for in the living room, and they're used and overused by multiple providers. Many providers actually joke that they've got the same client because it's the same stock image. They joke that they must be quite rich now because that client has got so much modeling work, and it's quite funny that they're so okay with looking the same because they've got that content or photos as a binary. I need one photo, I'll put in one photo, job done. Not really understanding that there's a huge opportunity lost by not putting something more bespoke, more meaningful, and more you in that space. If you were a family or you're a person yourself with a disability looking for services and looking for a provider, and you come across a website that just has stock images, it wouldn't fill you with confidence. You would look at that and say, like, do they have any real clients? It's like McDonald's having photos of other burgers in place of their own. It's like you buying the photo frame that comes with the fake family in it and just keeping the fake family inside it. And people coming over to visit and thinking that that's quite odd, because it is. I've learned is that people are much more receptive or responsive to photos that are authentic and real and are a better reflection of your services than stock images. Even if the stock images are beautifully photographed, even if they're in gorgeous housing or offices, it doesn't matter because it's not real. It's an illusion. Instead, take crappy photos and use those, and then take better photos and then use those, and then continue to take better and better photos as you go. And it will actually give families a better feel for what your service is like. And if your photos are crap, or the areas that you work in are ugly, then that's also a bit of a sign. If you're too embarrassed to show what you do and how you do it, then that says something about your service, and that should be rectified. If anything, it's great because using real photos creates and demands a certain level of transparency that any good provider should be willing to undergo and maintain in order to keep their standard levels high. And then what happens is that when you begin to take those photos, and I've done this myself, where I've had a photo and it's been a bad photo, but it's a real one, it bugs me to the point where I will then want to take it again and get a better version of it, and then continue to do that, and so just improve it. But that's a good thing. It creates, one, it upskills you, in your constant quest for better content for your business, but also it raises standards, and it really does motivate you. So I would certainly encourage that. And then we have some of the fixes. So firstly, one of the big things is that a lot of the times in disability organisations and the NDIS here in Australia, we have the concept of, well, we need to get media consent for clients. A lot of the times, media consent will be a form that we hand out to people at the beginning of their service. So, we're glad that you're going to undertake services with us. Here's the service agreement. Here's the rules. And here's media consent. You can say yes or no. And a lot of the times people say no. And then we say, well, they don't want their photo taken, fair enough. And then we don't ever take a photo of them. Media consent is quite funny because I know that if I was ever asked, hey, can we have consent to take your photo whenever we want and use it however we want within any context that we choose, I would also say no. I don't know any sane person that would be totally fine with their photo being taken and used however they want. You know, a lot of the times I've learned is that when someone, anyone, sees the photo for themselves, understands why it's being taken, what context is going to be within, what words and imagery is going to be associated and next to it, they're normally a lot more amenable to it. But just a blanket approval is rare and shouldn't be taken advantage of. So, you know, take photos and then contextualize them, use them in the moment, and request permission in the moment. You know, so that's really the big thing about media consent. Secondly, another great way to get, not get around it, but to utilize it is that, you know, instead of constantly trying to grab photos, put together photo shoots. So I know when I was starting WeFlex, um, we had a real issue with getting stock imagery. Um, Before I formed my opinion on the subject, but we were looking for stock imagery, and the issue is that there were no photos available for people with disabilities in the gym working out. And so what I decided to do was, me and my brother had an opportunity to present at an advertising kind of conference, and we sort of complained that like there was just no diversity, and we could find clowns in the gym, we could find photos and videos of people with fidget spinners on their head, but we couldn't find a person with a disability in the gym, just like working out. And definitely not in a inspirational porn context either, where it's all about how remarkably brave they are for lifting a weight. It was more just the workout we were more interested in. And a very cool agency at the time agreed to come around and do a free photo shoot for us to help us get our content, which was amazing. We had a great photo shoot at a friendly gym. We had models were people with disabilities that we knew who loved working out. We paid them for their time very well, and we got amazing photos that we were able to use again and again, and it was awesome. And it got to the point where we decided that we wanted to do that every year, and so we got into the habit of every year we would do a photo shoot. It was like an annual event, and it was also one that a lot of agencies, photographers, and photography studios would actually pitch for it. So we would actually have them pitching themselves to us, and we would look at what they wanted to do, how they understood the brief, what they would be offering and providing for us. And we would pick the one that we liked the most. We would put a call out for, within our own client base, as well as publicly, and say, we're looking for models, it'd be a few $100 for a day. We're going to film you doing this. It's going to be used in this context, full transparency around the purpose of the photo shoot. And we had lots of opportunities, lots of people signing up, really keen to do it for that reason, to support this brand, and because they wanted to be paid, which is absolutely fine. So we did that, and then we get even more amazing content. And that was sort of the pattern that we got into, was that we would just do it every year. And then instead of trying to find a photo somewhere in your OneDrive or your SharePoint, or trying to, grab a photo real quick to fit a need on a website, or trying to make one, fix its lighting or whatever, we just had this huge library, beautiful photos that we could absolutely use easily, that we were able to put everywhere. And it made a huge impact for us because we had great photos that were organically, naturally ours, as opposed to either, these iPhone images that are pretty average in quality, or great quality photographs that didn't reflect us in the slightest. And the big thing we had, one thing that I learned during these photo shoots, not that I've never been much of a photographer myself, but one thing I realized is that what made the photos great was the idea that we weren't looking for photos of people with disability. We were looking for photos of exercise, of adaptive exercise, of filming the weightlifting session for someone in a wheelchair. That was what we were filming, not the disability. That wasn't the point. It was an exercise photo shoot. It was a fitness photo shoot. And one of the reasons why we do that is because we were very adamantly against the concept of inspiration porn. Inspiration porn is a term coined by the late, great Stella Young, Australian disability advocate and comedian and journalist and author. Rest in peace, Stella. She was awesome. She did this incredible TED Talk, which I would highly encourage everybody to check out. But her whole thing was the idea that, she won a Community Spirit Award, despite the fact she had zero engagement with her community. And it was just because she was in a wheelchair. And really, you look around and then she sort of said, the real test for inspiration porn is like, what's being celebrated? Like the fact that I'm disabled or the fact that I'm doing anything of note? And if a photo or a story is how remarkably brave I am for waking up or going to work or taking a shit, then it's not really looking at me as an individual. It's just reducing me to an inspirational image. The point of the video, the photo, isn't about me. It's to make the person looking at it feel better about themselves or just feel inspired. And that's not really the role people with disabilities should be playing in society, you know. So instead, she sort of said that, using those images that are based in inspiration porn and making the unremarkable somehow remarkable because of disability does a huge disservice to everything. And it takes a lot of the realism out of, their experiences as well. So the idea is, and the metric should always be, that you should utilize photography to show real people doing real things that are interesting. And it's about the things they're doing, not the disability itself. You don't need to highlight someone in a wheelchair because it's pretty obvious anyway. That's one of the benefits of the visible disabilities. And if it's an invisible disability, then don't bother. Like, just take the photo. Like, disabled representation isn't about it looking disabled all the time. It's just about those people being in the photos in any context, as long as, it's them doing something, that is worthwhile, and that thing is what's the priority. So that's really the big thing about inspiration porn, is to make sure that you're not just glorifying something that doesn't need to be glorified. And people can smell it a mile away, and people don't like it. And more importantly, the more you know about it, the more you'll avoid it yourself. So you're welcome for that. So that's really where we get to, is that the priority should be, if you're looking to build any meaningful disability brand in this country or anywhere in the world, what you need to focus on is creating a culture of photos and videos with your team. An easy way to do it that many providers use to great effect is that they will put up a $50 voucher in a gift card every week, every fortnight, every month, and put together a group chat on WhatsApp or whatever. And they say, whoever can take the best photo of this week or this fortnight or this month wins the award. And, customers are also allowed to join in and compete for it. And so everyone will send in those images. Every image comes with, a little note on context and consent. And then for $50 a month or a fortnight, you've just got this stream of content that you can use. It's also great for morale when everyone is seeing what everybody else is up to and what they can do. And, it can be really fun. It can be really creative. It can actually invite or involve people with disability themselves being involved, especially if you make them eligible to submit their own photos. You can give them disposable cameras and just say, you've got 10 photos. I want you to take the 10 photos, and here's the brief. And it has to be, what are the 10 best things about living in this house or being in this service? And they go and take the 10 photos, and then you can use those. And it's from their perspective, which could be really cool and really fun. So that's really the big part around building culture, is that it just creates a stream of usable images from people that are doing what they do. They're getting excited and G'd up from each other, and you sort of solve a lot of your content problems in that sweep, whilst including people, making it fun. And let's say you're doing it every week, it's $2,500 a year. But if that is $2,500 to basically have a constant stream of amazing photos that you can plaster throughout social media and on the websites, and that is an excellent use of money, because you can easily spend more than that on a daily photo shoot with models and with photographers and the rest of it. So highly encourage that. That's it for today on the photos that we use. Please like, share, subscribe, follow, anything to appease the algorithm gods. That'd be mostly appreciated. And I will see you next week. Take care.